we move on, we would like to take this opportunity to thank all our sponsors, partners, and supporting organizations who have helped and supported us in our endeavors. Corporate lunch sponsor, Telstra Global. Student kit sponsor, Swipe Telecom. Webcast partner, Epitome Solutions.
Hospitality partner, Holiday Inn. Print media partner, Times of India. Radio partner, 93.5 Red FM.
Supporting organizations, Cerebral Business Research, Developing Telecoms, IBF, ITU APT, WiMAX Forum, DECT Forum, CHISFI, Telecom India Daily, Broadband India Forum, Acto, Telecom Watch, Cable Quest Broadband, IPTV India Forum, TUGI, OSPI, Light Reading India.
I would like to inform the August gathering that the entire seminar is being webcast live on communique13sitm.estv.in.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to call upon stage our chief guest, Mr. Sandeep Girotra, Head, India Region, Nokia Solutions and Networks Limited. Mr. Sandeep Girotra is responsible for sales and operations across the India region. Sir is also part of the CEO Asia, Middle East, and Africa leadership team. He successfully executed his previous role, leading the new India sub-region consisting of Aircel, Idea, Tata, BSNL, Uninor, and Videocon customers. Sir has over 20 years of experience in telecommunications, information technology, test equipment, and telecom service industries in the Indian and the multinational organizations. Sir joined NSN in 1996 and since then has contributed to the organization's growth in the capacity of account director, head of strategy and business development, and head of business solution. His success rate in growing and winning business, as well as ability to continuously innovate and adapt to changing business models, customer needs, and technologies ensure company's strong performance in operations and portfolio management. Prior to joining NSN, Sir held various positions in organizations such as RPG Telecom, Sham Telecom, Hewlett-Packard India, and Tektronix India. Sir, SITM welcomes you to Communique 13. I request Sir to kindly preside over the keynote session and share his views on the contemporary scenario of the global telecom industry.
Yes. Right. Good morning. Am I audible at the back of the auditorium? Boy, these lights are really bright. One thing which I want to tell, all the good things which they said here about me, half of them are true, half of them is just marketing talk, right? If I was as good, I would be Prime Minister. I wouldn't be speaking as well. Right? But nonetheless, here I am. I have about 30 minutes. What I'm going to do in those 30 minutes is actually talk about 3 or 4 key topics. I don't know if the format is Q&A, but I'll try and leave the last 5 minutes for any questions which you guys want to throw up. And please throw easy enough questions. One of the things which happens as you grow up in the corporate life is that unless you make the presentation to be easy, it's hardly likely that it will be understood, right? So please throw easy questions. 4 topics to my presentation. I want to share a little bit about the global telecom trends. I want to talk a little bit about where the technology is heading from the perspective of a key technology player like Nokia Solutions and Networks, and this we believe is also the way the overall industry is going to head. Then I'm going to briefly touch upon what's happening in the Indian environment, and then what are the key learnings and the key way forward. I would start to pick up a little bit about what Professor Aslekar and Professor Patil talked about. In India, obviously the market is very different. It is urban and it is rural. And while we may or may not be at the leading edge of the technology in terms of many things, but we are clearly on the leading edge of many things like the business models. There is nowhere, for example, in the world where the companies can make a 30% EBITDA on a 35 to 40 paise per minute kind of mobile tariff. I mean, this is a business model only which India has been able to achieve. So while we are good at many things, there are many things which we need to move forward at, and that's picking up on Professor Patil, your point. In the overall global telecom trends, which I wanted to pick up, was that fundamentally our telecom world and the overall, everything in the world is in continuous motion. And if we just link this back into what we were doing in the telecom world from 1990 onwards to till where we are today in the last 20 odd years, it's all out here. You know, many of you were probably in your early schooling years, but I started my telecom journey in the mid-90s, right? When I started to work for Nokia, which then changed to Nokia Siemens and then back to Nokia Solutions and Networks. But I have lived through that phase where, you know, a telephone was a voice device, and then starting to move on to a little bit of data, which was one way. I was the receiver of the data, to moving on today where one is starting to move on to a two-way data. So the user-generated content is starting to become one of the key drivers of the data growth story. So clearly we are moving from voice to one-way data to two-way data. And also what we are moving towards very rapidly is this whole thing called the customer experience. And Professor Aslekar started to touch upon that, which was about that there's a whole lot of information flowing through the bit pipe, right? There's a whole lot of information which is flowing through. Now, who is able to capture the maximum value of the information which is flowing through that? Because the bit pipe at the end is a commodity. We have an efficiency play there. But what is the maximum value you can draw out of that is where the key success factor for our industry does lie. And how we can make that relevant to the person who is consuming it, how we can make that relevant to the device which the person is using at the time he is using, and so on. So that, I think, is the holy grail for our industry going forward. What we have also seen is along the way, and again, I'm glad that this point was picked up in the opening two speeches, that the 800 million users in India, and I would argue worldwide, they don't care whether it's 2G, 3G, 4G, 10G, whatever. They don't care. What they are looking at is experience. And coming from a company which does a lot of technology piece, this might sound counterintuitive, but I really do believe that the end user on the other end of the phone or the device which he is using, he does not care. To him, it is irrelevant what is the underlying technology. To him, what is relevant is the experience. Is he getting the speed which he wants? Is he getting the content which he wants? Is he getting the billing kind of information which he needs? And that's all he cares for. And as budding professionals in the telecom business, I think this is one thing which we have to remember. Always look at anything and everything from the endpoint of the consumer, of the end user. The technology will find its way to fulfill the need which is there. So technology is important, but from a user standpoint, it is not. And you do see that, we went from GSM to 3G, we're starting to talk about 4G. But the key point really is that whatever we do, we will almost never be able to predict where the next big application or requirement will come from. So the key thing is that we do whatever systems, whatever work which we are doing in terms of technology, in terms of business models, that they are agile, they are adaptable, they can be changed at the drop of a hat, as it is said, and it can move on quite rapidly to the changing requirements of the end user. So, many of you have probably started to use, the Facebook and the WeChat and all of those things as a matter of habit. Many of people like us, I'm sure some of the professors here have not, right? Could we have predicted that Facebook would have 1 billion plus users? Could we have predicted that things like WeChat, etc., would come in and WhatsApp will come in and they will take away the revenues they have done in the past? Or would there be a Twitter? I mean, I don't think in my working life in the last 5 years I could have predicted anything like a Twitter, right? So the key question is that we have to be agile. And we will never be able to predict where the next big thing is coming from. But our whole systems, they need to be agile. Our whole business models, they need to be agile. Our thinking needs to be agile to move this along. And I just want you to also give you a little bit of a flavor of how different the technologies around the world are. And this is an example here of Korea. You know, in India, and I will be starting to touch upon India in a while, we've been looking at mobile as essentially a voice device. As we go along, and I will talk about that as we go along, when we look at some of the countries, how the data consumption is going, and this is going to be one of my underlying themes for the next 10 minutes, is that eventually our whole industry in India and worldwide is going to move towards mobile broadband. Voice, all of us are seeing starting to become commoditized. We are going to move towards data, and contextual data is the key thing along the way. And we are starting to see some countries where this is already happening. And these are some examples from Korea. I guess this is the pointer, right? Yes. So in Korea, for about 40% plus consumers are LTE consumers. The kind of speeds which you get, and you know, Vishy is here from Vodafone somewhere in the, yeah, there he is. So we were in Korea in the month of April this year. And what we found there was that the mobile broadband is all pervasive. You walk into a shopping mall, 3 floors down into the basement, into a train which is running at 300 kilometers an hour, 20 Mbps is the speed which you drop down to as the minimum speed anywhere you are. And that is absolutely incredible, right? We define our broadband speeds at home, which comes with the DSL at 2 MB, and if you get 2 MB at home, we are pretty thrilled about it. But you know, these guys are starting to look at 20 MB in a moving train inside the tunnel at 300 kilometers an hour, and he or she has a device in her hand which she's playing around with. So that's where we are going to head to. And once we have that kind of a thing, what is it that you can do? Many things. So this helps me to transition down to when we start to talk about mobile broadband and these high speeds. This is nice and glamour stuff, right? It's very interesting, you know, going from 2 Mbps in our homes to 20 Mbps to 100 Mbps and such like speeds. It's very glamorous, but it takes a lot getting there. It takes a lot getting there. Today, as a data point, in India, our average data consumption is about, about 10 GB a month per user or much less, and I will come to that. But one of the visions which the telecom industry has, and that also comes from our company, is that we say that by the 2020 year, every consumer will consume, you know, listen to this, 1 gigabyte per user per day. Right? Now start to imagine this, 1 gigabyte per user per day, which is about 60 times what it is today. So that's the kind of data consumption which will happen on the networks, mobile or fixed, that's not relevant. That's the kind of consumption which will happen. And what that means is that it will throw to business managers and also to the technologists a big challenge to get that going, because the demand is not going to stop. But the resources are limited. Resources in terms of how much fiber you can lay on the ground, how much spectrum you can have. So there will be 6 key things in our point of view which will come through or which will need to fall together for that vision to happen, because somebody will make that happen for sure. And those 6 things are that we will need to support in a mobile network, and we also do believe that majority of it would come via the mobile network. The fixed networks will be continuing to use to do the backhaul and all of that stuff, but it will come through the mobile networks. So the networks will need to support up to 1,000 times more capacity than they do today. And when you come to 1,000 times more capacity, it is very simple to say, you know, have 1,000 times more spectrum, right? And some of you who have been following the telecom industry in general in India or outside, you all know how expensive or how key or how controversial the spectrum discussion is. So 1,000 times more spectrum is never coming. You know, if you get 5 times more or 10 times more, one would be lucky. And the whole discussion has to be around that there is available spectrum, which is regulated, which is unregulated. So how do you mix and match and actually take the whole multiplexing or the trunking gain out of it? So those kind of things will come in. The other discussion can be that there will be 1,000 times more the number of sites which we have today on the ground. If you start to do just a linear, this business is going to completely die. And this business is not going to die. Somebody will come in who will do the innovations to give 1,000 times more capacity at similar cost what is going on today. That is going to happen. And as Professor Patil was saying, you know, there is a lot of intellectual horsepower in this room which is developing. Probably many of you, some of you will be the guys who will make that happen. The other key point around the data is that it is starting to become interactive. More than the speed, latency is the one which kills the experience. And technologies will come which will make latency history. So technologies will come, they are on the way. As an example, and this is where the telco and the IT will come together. As an example, the networks, the systems, they need to become intelligent enough to say that from SITM Pune, the base station site, which is wherever it is close to this, you know, majority of the students are going to that particular site and pulling out that kind of information. So can you cache that in the telecom equipment itself? So can you bring the telecom and the IT storage together on the device and actually cache most of the equipment right next on this site, which is next serving your SITM campus? And therefore you get rid of so much of latency. Or if you're doing interactive gaming and things of that nature. So latency is one thing which will be massively and strongly attacked during the coming years. What will also happen is that when we are going to be taking mobile broadband to 800 million, 900 million people in India and to the other people outside of India, is that we will use very complex networks. We will use regulated frequencies, we will use unregulated frequencies, we would use GSM, WCDMA, 4G, Wi-Fi, anything you speak of, we will use them as one big bucket. So the networks will need to become intelligent. So artificial intelligence will start to come into the networks, right? So these networks will become self-healing. So that's one part which will come in. The fourth thing which will come in is, and this is important, this to a lot of us sometimes is at the, you know, way back on our priority list. I don't know how many of you know that telecom industry in India is the second largest producer of electricity behind NTPC, right? It's an interesting fact that telecom industry today produces and consumes for its own use, and it is the second largest producer of electricity. If we continue to go down this straight line, we are going to be very bad corporate citizens, and we are going to be business-wise, you know, we are not going to be viable. So things which will come through is that eventually we will grow the traffic 1,000 times, but the energy consumption will remain flat, right? That has to be the key thing which one needs to think of. Cloudification of the telcos, another big trend which is going to come in. And the final point which I touched upon briefly and which was touched upon in the initial presentation by Professor Aslaker as well was about personalizing the experience. So spectrum, experience, latency, energy, cloudification, all of that will need to come together as an ecosystem for the eventual vision or the eventual data consumption, which will go to 60 to 100 times that of today, which will be 1 gigabyte per user per day. And I'm going to skip through this. So that then starts to bring me to the Indian business. So what we have talked about so far is that we will have data explosion happening. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind, and there are some data points I will show here to the audience, how the data explosion in India is happening as well. It always helps to go back a little bit into history. This is about the history of the Indian telecom in the last 10 or 12 years. We started out in the mid-90s with the mobile telephony, and many of you, as I said, would be probably too young to even understand what was going on there. But this was around the time, 2003, 2004, when the subscriber numbers started to take off, right? And I want you to remember this, because this, in many ways, is something which will repeat itself in the coming years. It will absolutely repeat itself in the coming years. What happened here is that somebody here, and of course, there were several companies who innovated the business model and who turned the business model on its head. And instead of waiting for the subscribers to come and then roll out the services, he turned it on its head. Said, I will roll out these services and the network, and the subscribers will come. And this is exactly what happened. So, complete change of business model. The technology was the same, everything else was the same, but the whole business model was flipped on its head. And suddenly, what you see here is that we went from a couple of million subscribers here to today we are, what, 800, 900 million users in India. Right? So, in my opinion, in India, we are sitting exactly at the same cusp for the data story. Now, whether it is in the next 3 months or 6 or 12 or 24, but it's just around the corner. It's just around the corner. And for telecom professionals and budding professionals like from SITM, while there is a lot of challenging news around our industry, but I think you are sitting at the cusp of a massive growth which is going to be staring at you in the coming period of time in India. Having said that, there are quite a few challenges which need to be navigated through, and one of them is around how much is the spectrum which is available to the industry. And when I talk about data, there is no doubt, at least in my mind, that most of this data explosion is going to come via the use of the mobile as the delivery technology. The voice in India happened with mobile. I have no doubt in my mind that for mobile broadband penetration in India, mobile will be the technology, whether now it is 2G, 3G, 4G. As I said, for the user it is irrelevant. For him, what is relevant is the experience. So one of the key things, in my opinion, which you should familiarize yourself about is the most important resource for getting mobile broadband into the heartland of India will be how the spectrum and the policies there play out. And this is something which I would propose that everyone should keep their eyes open. This is a big challenge, the biggest challenge for our industry, if there is one, this is the one today. Having said that, there are significantly high number of opportunities, and I want to share some data points here with you. The dark shade here is India. The wireless penetration is still about 70% from voice standpoint. Practically all of it is 2G. This is here in India. This is, all of it is practically 2G. Data revenues are very low, 16%. So this points, and when you compare that, China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia. So when you look at some of these data points, very clearly it tells us that data is bound to grow. And many of us in the past couple of years have had this feeling that who will use data in India? This whole technology is a bit of a mess. And I want to spend some time here. This is the graph which will again repeat itself several times during the coming days and years. If you look at this one, our technology, or whenever there is a new technology introduction, and I will now reference this or anchor this in your heads to 3G and 4G type of discussions which are happening. So when the new technology comes, 3G came in about 2 or 3 years ago in India, LTE is around the way, the 4G. There is always a peak of inflated expectations, right? And if you go back and flip back, go to Mr. Google and research 2000, 2001, the 3G auctions in Europe, countries like UK, Italy, Germany, all the operators bid 3, 4, 5 billion for the spectrum, and suddenly everything fell flat. So there's a peak of inflated expectations. Then you go through a complete trough of disillusionment that it's not going to work. And let me just flip through it. So as far as we in India is concerned, I do believe that 3G, while the user doesn't care, but from a business people standpoint, 3G is going to be the dominant technology for mobile broadband for significant years to come. 4G will start to take its place, no question. And I'm not trying to underplay 4G because we do a lot of 4G work, and we do in fact a lot of work in India. But purely from a commercial standpoint, 3G about 2010-11 was about here. And now where we are is somewhere about here. We are starting to see the ecosystem developing. So very clearly, this is a graph. If you were to take back a few things, this is one of them. This is typically what we would see whenever a new technology comes in. And we are already starting to see that the 4G is starting to sit right up here, somewhere up here, right? It's an exciting technology, of course it is. I mean, it delivers you massive speeds, right? It's an exciting technology, but when it comes to the consumer is looking for a device which is affordable. He is looking for content which is relevant. He is looking for several other things, the packaging and so on. So unless those things come together, the technology is a good to have, but it is still not business. And when I was talking about data, and the reason I talked about that we are going through, or we are starting to climb up to the slope of enlightenment, which is out here. Here are some data points from India market. And we can, some of my colleagues can share more details around it. There is, publicly available information which we can share. In India, during the course of 2012, the data consumption went up by 92%. So it nearly doubled. At the end of 2011 to the beginning of 2012, it nearly doubled. Irrespective of the technology, the data is being consumed with 2G as the underlying technology or 3G as the underlying technology, but it is being consumed across technologies. What we are also seeing is that as the devices come in, and this is an interesting data point here, the smartphone penetration in India is only about 7%. But 50% of data consumption happens with that 7% of devices. Right? So it starts to tell you that how important is the technology, how important is the end user device. Right? I will sort of flip through this relatively fast, but also it's a bit of a myth that the data consumption happens only in the big cities, the Delhis, the Bombays, the Bangalores and of this world. If we start to look at states, half of the data consumption, so about half of the data consumption comes from non-metros. It's very interesting. We think that the guys out there in the smaller towns or villages are probably not savvy enough. And I think I would refer back to this. That's completely incorrect. These guys run their businesses so fast, so efficiently. And sometimes I use this example, and it's sometimes possibly a wrong example to use. But the vegetable seller who is out there, on his push cart selling the vegetables, he can do the calculation of 700 grams of a vegetable much faster than any of us can do. Right? Damn, he probably never went to school. Right? So these guys know how to take value out of things, how to pick up the things which matter. Another example which I like to use a lot of times, you walk into a chemist shop, there is one roadside chemist shop, right? And then there is a chain 98.4 or ABCDE. You walk into that and you give me a bottle of a syrup or a pack of Crocin. So, tuck, he will do all of that. Sir, I don't have it. You walk into another shop, the guy is 5th, 6th, 10th class pass. He doesn't even know what the formula of Crocin is, but he exactly knows where it is. He exactly knows that there is one leaf left. He exactly knows when the next one is coming. So these guys actually know what to take value out of things. And therefore, to ignore that market will be at our own peril. Somebody will come and take that away. Somebody will come and take that away. So overall, then now I'm starting to summarize this. So when it comes to, therefore, a market or any market, and it is more specific to India and as well as relevant to the rest of the world, I think we have 3 or 4 levers which we need to press. And actually, if you see here, technology is hardly the lever which, as a technology company, we think we need to press. The levers are tariffs, devices, applications, content, delivery, and building the right kind of coverage. So technology is just an underlying given. 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever else. So technology is an underlying given. These are the things which will come through to help our industry go and cross this cusp which we are at and the opportunity which we are staring at. The opportunity is huge. The whole ecosystem needs to come together. Interesting business model needs to come together. Some new, fresh, innovative thoughts and ideas and minds need to come together, which I'm sure there are many here in this hall itself. So we are looking at a great opportunity from my standpoint for making the whole telecom omnipresent, which is the theme of your show here. We have gone to 800 million mobile subscribers. Over the course of next few years, we will go to several hundred million mobile broadband subscribers. Somebody needs to come in and flip the business models and look at it completely differently. So those will be my comments here. So I don't know how I am doing on time and if the format allows Q&A, but if there are 1 or 2 quick questions or comments, I am happy to take those. And I'll take only 1 or 2 in the interest of time. I can barely see at the back, so yeah, now it's better. Okay, there's 1 question over there. Okay, so I can see 1 here. So I think those are the 2 we will probably take. The gentleman here in yellow t-shirt. Yeah, we'll take the one there first.
Good morning, sir. I'm Anuja from Diva Patil College, and I'm really amateur at this, so please pardon me if I am not relevant or if I go wrong. 7-8 months.
I won't notice because I am as good.
Around 7-8 months before, I read an article on LTE in a magazine, and it was about the implementation of LTE in rural area in India. Talking about mobile revolution or uniformity in network, like you said about the speed, 20 Mbps in Korea, or something like iMode in Japan. I wanted to ask, Indian masses take a certain time to observe new technology. All of us are not very tech savvy. And somewhere in rural India, right now where people are not even familiar with 3G or something like that, how long will LTE become a reality in India, in the rural areas?
Yeah, so how long will LTE become relevant in India in rural areas? So actually, I go back to my initial statement. As far as the end user is concerned, rural or urban, technology is not relevant for him really. What is relevant is what is getting delivered on the back of that technology. As long as we can get that right, technology will come in to service that requirement. That's what I really believe. So I would actually flip this question from a technology question to more of what can you deliver to that rural user in terms of what he wants to use from a content perspective and so on. So that's what will take the adoption of technology to the next level. It will not be the technology and so on. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. So my name is Santosh Mani I'm doing BTech in IT. So I want to ask you, as we all know, sir, Android in today's world is at peak. So why don't you use in your Nokia devices that platform?
Right. Outside, when this forum is over, I can give you my personal opinions one-on-one. But here I would give what has been taught to me by my corporate communication team. This subject is relevant to Nokia, and I work for Nokia Solutions and Networks, so this question is best addressed to Nokia. I apologize for that sanitized answer. Other comments I can make outside one-on-one.
No problem, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you very much for your patience and listening. I guess should be moving off the stage now, right?
Sir, can I ask one doubt?
Well, I would submit myself to the timekeepers here, but please go on.
Yeah, hello, sir.
So the timekeepers, you can send me off the stage when you want.
Hello, sir. Myself, Smita. I am from the System and Finance, first year SITM. And my question is that we are going forward with 3G, LTE, and Reliance Jio is also coming with the LTE. Now we are more and more moving into the LTE infrastructure, and it's like more and more money will be going into this infrastructure. So we have to come up with a solution for the revenue losses. So what are the recent OSs and the telcos are coming up to compensate the revenue loss going on with the LTE infrastructure and also with the upcoming ARPU going down also. And Reliance Jio is coming up with LTE and the ARPU will be going more and more. So we need a very nice, basic, good model to compensate the revenue loss and also to tackle the ARPU problem going on.
Right. My answer to that will be that I would, in a way, somewhat challenge the revenue loss, because if you look at our industry in the last couple of months and years, the average revenues and the overall revenues are starting to go up because the competitive intensity is somewhat lesser. And any new technology like an LTE you refer to, as long as we can make, and I refer to, as long as we can make the content which we are delivering contextual, relevant, we can monetize it better than we have been able to in the past. So if we are a bit pipe as a telco, then efficiency is our play. But if we are able to actually monetize the content which is flowing through our bit pipes, then this revenue loss question actually goes away and it becomes a great opportunity for us to improve the revenues. That would be my thinking. Thank you. Thank you for listening.